Okay, we're going to make a start now. So welcome everyone to our GCSE Maths session. In today's lesson, we are going to be looking at trigonometry. This is the first lesson on trigonometry. We're going to be looking at SOH CAH TOA. We're going to go through labeling a triangle. We're going to look at some examples where you have to apply trigonometry, SOH CAH TOA, to find the length of the side and then find an angle. And at the same time, we're going to be looking at a lot of exam questions. Okay. Now, this topic is applicable for foundation and higher students. For people who want to challenge themselves and want harder questions, I've also incorporated harder questions on the slides, which I've put in there. If you feel confident with this topic, you can have a go at. They're normally 4 markers, 5 markers. So I have harder questions on the slides. I won't be going through them, but I have work solutions for them as well. Just for those who feel confident on this topic, I want to have a go at this topic by themselves. Okay. But when we get onto exam questions, there will be 2 exam questions on the slide, one which we will be going through together, and then one for those who feel confident and want to challenge themselves. I've got one for them as well. Okay, if you have any questions at any point, just let me know in the Q&A. The questions which are relevant to the question, to the what we are doing, I will answer straight away. But the ones which are not relevant, I will answer towards the end of the session when I do the open Q&A. Okay. So if we make a start now, just for anyone who's joined now, this is applicable for foundation and higher tier. Okay, next week we will be moving on to a more advanced topic, which is applicable for those who want to do higher or those who are doing higher. We're going to be moving on to the sine rule next week. Okay, so first of all, when we're looking at trigonometry, the first step to any question is labeling your sides. Okay, now how do you label sides? Well, basically there are 3 sides that you need to be aware of. Okay, and that is the hypotenuse, that is the adjacent, and that is the opposite. Okay, now the hypotenuse we looked at in our last lesson. Okay, the hypotenuse is the longest side in a triangle. And when we're doing trigonometry, for this sort of trigonometry, it is only applicable for right angled triangles. So this triangle over here is right angle. So as you can see, the right angle is over here. So the side opposite the right angle is going to be the hypotenuse. Okay, that's what we label as H. The hypotenuse is the longest side in the triangle. Okay, and it's always opposite the right angle. Okay, so that's how you find the hypotenuse. And with any trigonometry question, the first thing is going to be label your sides. Okay, so that's how we find the hypotenuse. It's the longest side in the triangle and it's opposite to the right angle. Okay, now the next side that I'm going to label is the opposite. Okay, now the opposite is basically in a triangle, we're given an angle. Okay, over here we can see the angle is 43 degrees. So the side opposite the angle that you've been given is the opposite. Okay, we label that as the opposite. Okay, so normally in a triangle, you're given an angle. The side which is opposite to the angle that you've been given is the opposite. Okay, and then finally, the side which is left over is known as the adjacent. Okay, there are 3 sides. Once you've labeled the hypotenuse and the opposite, the side which is left over is the adjacent. Another way that you can think about this is it connects the angle to the right angle. Okay, so as you can see, the right angle is over here and the angle that you've been given is over there. So the side which connects the angle to the right angle is known as the adjacent. That's another way of thinking it. But the way that I normally go about this, you label the hypotenuse. That's the easiest one to label. It's the longest side in the triangle and it's opposite to the right angle. You label the opposite. The opposite is just basically opposite the angle that you've been given. And then the one which is left over is the adjacent. Okay. Or you could think of adjacent as connects angle to right angle. You could think about it like that as well. Okay, but this is really important, that you need to know how to label the sides of a triangle confidently before we move on to any trigonometry question. Okay, So moving on now, if you have any questions, let me know now, because what we're going to do now is we're going to practice labeling the sides of two triangles before we move on to some examples. So if we have a look at these two triangles, okay, and we're labeling the sides. Let's start off with this triangle. So let's label the hypotenuse first. There are three sides we need to label. Right angle is over here. So the side which is opposite the right angle is going to be the hypotenuse. Okay, that's the longest side in the triangle. The side which is opposite to the right angle is the hypotenuse. Okay, so longest side, right angle, side opposite it is the hypotenuse. Okay, this is the longest side. Okay, this is our angle. Okay, so this is the angle that we've been given. So the side which is opposite it, which is on this side, is going to be the opposite. Okay, and then the side which is left over is going to be the adjacent. So as you can see, the adjacent connects the right angle to the angle that you've been given. Okay, so we've labeled the sides again. For those that need explaining again, we have another example that I'm going to go through, and hopefully you get the gist of labeling a triangle. Okay, so just to reiterate over here, right angle, side which is opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. You label it with a H. You're given an angle, 37 degrees. The side which is opposite to the angle is known as the opposite. You label it with a O. Okay? And then the side which is left over is the adjacent. You label it with a A. Or the adjacent can also be the side which connects the right angle to the angle. Okay? If we have a look at this one, anyone that still needs clarifying, we have one more example which we're going through. So we've got our right angle over here. So this is our right angle, as you can see. The side which is opposite to this right angle is going to be the hypotenuse. So we've got the hypotenuse there. We're going to label it with a H because it's the longest side in the triangle. The angle is over here, 37 degrees. So the side opposite to this right angle is going to be the opposite. We're going to label it with the O. And then the side which is left over, which is this side, is just going to be labeled as the adjacent. Okay, and remember the adjacent is connecting the right angle to the angle over here. So that's how you label your triangle. You've labeled the hypotenuse, you've labeled the opposite, and you've labeled the adjacent. Okay, and for any trigonometry question, this is the first step that you're always going to do. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please let me know in the Q&A. But we're going to move on to the formulas now. Okay, so just remember three sides: hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. You need to label these three sides for any trigonometry question. Okay, so now moving on to SOH CAH TOA. Okay, now to explain this, I'm going to draw three triangles, and I'm going to explain you why it's called SOH CAH TOA. So simply, SOH CAH TOA is something easy to remember. That's why it's one of the reasons we use it for trigonometry. All you have to do is write SOH like this. The middle letter should go at the top, like this. Okay, so we've got we've just written out SOH CAH TOA, and all you have to do is write the middle letter at the top. Okay, so as you can see, SOH, the middle letter is O, so we've written it at the top. CAH, the middle letter is A, so we've written it at the top. TOA, the middle letter is O, so we've written it at the top. Okay, now all you need to do is make yourself a triangle, like this. So we've made ourselves a triangle, just like that. And we're just going to split the triangle. We're going to split each letter, just like that. . Okay, so all we've done is we've taken SOH CAH TOA and we've put it into a triangle. We've put the middle letter at the top, and we've just split each letter up into different sections. So we've got SOH CAH TOA. Okay, now when we were labeling a triangle, remember we had three sides. We had the hypotenuse, we had the hypotenuse, we had the opposite, and we had the adjacent. Now we label the hypotenuse with a H, the opposite with a O, and the adjacent with an A. In this formula, you also have an O, you have a H, you have a A, you have a H, and then you have a O, and then you have an A. Okay, so as you can see, over here, we've got O for opposite, H for hypotenuse, and A for adjacent. Okay, in this formula, the O stands for opposite, H stands for hypotenuse, and A stands for adjacent. That's why we have it. And someone's just asked, why do we split the triangle? Well, we split the triangle just to make it easier for us so we know what we're multiplying and what we're sort of dividing. So over here, the bottom two multiply to each other. Okay, the bottom two multiply to each other. And basically, all you have to do is whatever you're working out, you cover up. Okay, so if we're looking at this, by the way, S stands for sine, C stands for cos, and T stands for tan. Okay, and if you have your calculator, you will see that you have functions for sine, cos, and tan on your calculator. So for example, in a triangle, if we are trying to work out the opposite, all we have to do is cover the opposite up. Okay, so if we were to work out opposite, we're just going to cover it up. We've covered it up and we're going to imagine that it's not there. Okay, what do we have left? We have sine multiplied by h. So if we know your hypotenuse, all we're going to do is we're going to do sine, your angle. This will make more sense when we look at an example, and we're going to multiply it by the hypotenuse. And when we do this, we're going to get the opposite as our answer. Okay, the opposite, we're going to get a number for the length of the opposite of the triangle. Over here, if we look at this triangle, let's say we wanted to work out the hypotenuse. Okay, so whatever we need to work out, we're going to cover. We're going to cover the hypotenuse because we need to work it out. What are we left with? We're left with A and we're left with cos. And because there is this line, that line means divide. Okay, so to work out the hypotenuse, we need to do the A, which is adjacent, divided by cos angle. And that's going to give us the hypotenuse. Okay, so that's why we decided to split the triangle, just so that whatever we cover up, this line means divide and this line means multiply. Okay, so in this case over here, let's say that we need to work out A. Okay, we don't know what A is. We're going to cover it up just like that. What are we left with? We're left with O, and then there's this line over here and tan at the bottom. So if we do the opposite divided by tan angle, that's going to give us the adjacent. Okay, so that's how we're going to use SOH CAH TOA basically, and this will make more sense when we move on to some examples. And I think the next thing is examples, yeah. But for now, what you need to know is this formula, SOH CAH TOA. If you don't have the angle, then there's a different process that we run through, and we're going to be covering that in today's lesson as well. So don't worry about that now. We have to use the inverse function when we're working out the angle, but we'll move on to that after we've worked out sides. Okay, so SOH CAH TOA. And these are the formulas. Don't worry about the formulas. As long as you remember SOH CAH TOA, you'll be fine. Looking at an example now. So I'm going to run through this example, and then I've got an exam question that we're going to go through together. So I'm going to let you guys have a go at it, and then I'll go through it. And then if you feel confident on this topic, I've got a harder question for you guys to have a go at, which I've got a mock scheme for as well. So, finding the length. This is how you answer trigonometry questions where you have to work out the side. Okay? Step one is going to be label the triangle. Okay, so labeling the triangle, you need to label the hypotenuse, you need to label the opposite, and then you need to label the adjacent. Okay, these are the three sides you need to label. So if we have a look at this example, okay, we've got the right angle over here. Our right angle is over here. The side which is opposite it is going to be the hypotenuse. That's the longest side in the triangle. Our angle is over here. So the side which is opposite it is going to be the opposite. And then the side which is left over is going to be the adjacent. And that connects this angle to the right angle. So we've labeled our sides: hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Okay, now the second step is going to be cross out the side which you don't need. So if we have a look at this example over here, the adjacent A, we have 15 centimeters. So that's giving us a number, that's giving us some info. So we're going to keep the adjacent because it's giving us a value. We need to keep the opposite because that's X. If we scrap the opposite, then we're not going to be able to work out X. Okay, now we can scrap the hypotenuse. The reason why we can scrap the hypotenuse is we have no information at all regarding that side. We don't need it to work out the question. Okay, because there's no value on that side and it's completely irrelevant to the question. It's not X and it doesn't have a number. So it's completely irrelevant. We don't need it. So we're just going to cross it out. Okay, so once we've crossed it out, we're left with O and A. Now the third step is going to be SOH CAH TOA. So we're going to draw out our triangles. So we've got SOH, we've got CAH, and we've got TOA. Okay, so we've got three triangles. Now, we need to select one of the triangles which has the sides that we need. Okay, so we've crossed out H, so we don't need H in our formula. In our triangle, we don't want H. We only want A and O in our formula. So you need to decide which formula has A and O. So this one has O and H. It doesn't have A, so we can cross that out. This one over here has A and H. It doesn't have O, so we can cross this one out. This one has O and A, so we're going to use this one over here. Because over here we crossed out H because we didn't need it. We're just going to need O and A. So we need to select the formula that has O and A in it. Okay, and that's this formula. And remember, T is for tan. Okay, so all you have to do now is, what are we working out? We need to work out O. Okay, because O is X. So we're just going to cover up O. Okay, so we're going to cover up O. And remember, the bottom two multiply. So all we're going to do is we're going to get tan. And remember, whenever you have tan, you have to input the angle next to it. So it's going to be tan. The angle is 40, as you can see over here. Tan 40. And then you're going to multiply it by A. What's A? A is 15, as you can see over here. So we're just going to have tan 40 multiplied by 15. And that's going to give us O, what we crossed out over here. That's going to give us the opposite. Okay, now at this point, you can just use your calculator. So if you go onto your calculator, you can see that on the third row down, you have sin, cos, and tan. Okay, so all you're going to do is you're going to click tan, and a bracket will open up. And then you're going to type in 40, close your brackets, and then you're going to multiply by 15. Okay, so you're going to type in this into your calculator, and that will get you an answer of 12.5864947. Okay, and we're just going to leave our answer to one decimal place. Okay, so it's going to be 12.6 to one decimal place. Okay, and that's the length of the opposite that we have just worked out over there. Okay, now I'm going to run through this again. We have an exam question that I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to have a go at before I go through it. But just for anyone who needs clarifying, follow these steps. Label the triangle first. Hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Hypotenuse is the side which is opposite to the right angle, longest side in the triangle. The opposite is opposite to the angle that you've been given. So over here, we've been given 40. So the side opposite it is going to be labeled as O. Okay. And then the adjacent is the side which is left over, or the side which connects the angle to the right angle, which is 15 centimeters there. Then you cross out the side which you don't need. Okay, so in this case, we didn't need the H because we had no information. There was no value and it wasn't X. Okay, so we crossed it out because it was completely irrelevant. We didn't need it at all. Step 3, draw out your triangles. SOH CAH TOA. And look at the triangle which has your O and your A in it, or the side which you haven't crossed out. Okay, so we crossed out some SOH because it has O and H. We crossed out H, so we didn't need it. We need our triangle to have O and A in it. Okay, we crossed out KA because it didn't have our O in it, and then we kept TOA because it had O and A in it. And then after you do that, you cross out the some letter that you need to work out, and then you follow the triangle rules. You multiply the bottom two, or you divide the top by the bottom, and then you just substitute in your values. Whenever you have sin, cos, or tan, your angle goes after it, and then you just multiply it by the value that you've been given over here. In this case, it was 15. Okay, and then you will type into your calculator, and then you will get your answer. Now, do you always do it to one decimal place unless they say otherwise? Yeah. So normally, whenever I'm answering questions, unless they've not given you the value, they've not given you do it to two decimal place or one decimal place, I normally give my answer to one decimal place. That is completely fine. So if they don't tell you, just give your answer to one decimal place. But if they do tell you, make sure you give it to the um, value that they've specified. Okay. So exam question. So before we move on to working out the angle, I've got two exam questions. So we've got this one on the left, which I'm going to go through. For those who feel confident on this topic and want a harder question, because in the feedback form, a lot of people said that they wanted some harder questions. I've put in a harder question. I won't be going through the harder question just because of time, but I've got a model working out answer that I've written myself for you to check your answer. Okay, but I will be going through the first question over here. Okay, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to have a go at this question. If you're struggling, please let me know in the Q&A, but I will be going through the answers in approximately 2 minutes. Once you've got to an answer, you can let me know in the Q&A. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. Okay, I'm going to go through the answer to the first question, and then after I've done the first question, I will put the answer up for the second question. Okay, so it says find the length of the side RT in the triangle above. Okay, so how do we work out what RT is? So if we have a look now, RT is this side. So from R to T. Okay, we need to work out the length of that side when we're going from R to T. Okay, that's our X. So we've labeled what our X is. And remember, with any trigonometry question, step one is going to be label the sides. Okay, so we're going to label the sides. Okay, so right angle over here. So we've got our right angle over here. The side which is opposite to the right angle is going to be the hypotenuse, because that's the longest side in the triangle. The angle is over here, 53 degrees. So the side which is opposite to the angle that you've been given is the opposite. We're going to label that as the opposite. And then the side which is left over is the adjacent. Or you could think of it as the side which connects the angle to the right angle. Okay, so we've labeled our sides. Second thing is cross out one of the sides, the side that you don't need. So as you can see, we need the adjacent. Okay, so we need the adjacent because that's X. We need to know what X is, so we're going to keep the adjacent. And then over here, we need to keep the opposite because we know the value of the opposite. Okay, so we're going to keep the adjacent and we're going to keep the opposite. We can scrap the hypotenuse because we don't know anything about the hypotenuse. We don't need it. It's totally irrelevant to the question. Okay, so we're going to cross out the hypotenuse. Okay, now once we've crossed out the hypotenuse, we're going to write down our formulas. Okay, so we've got SOH CAH TOA. So we've got SOH, we've got CAH, and we've got TOA. Okay. Okay, so we've got SOH CAH TOA. Now, which formula do we need to choose? Okay, we've got O and we've got A. Okay, so we need to choose the formula which has an O in it and an A in it. So this first formula has an O and a H. It doesn't have an A, so we're going to cross it out. Ka, this has an A and a H. It doesn't have an O and an A, so we're going to cross it out. And then TOA has an O in it and an A in it, so we're going to keep it. What do we need to work out? We need to work out A. Okay, because we need to work out A, we're going to cross out A because we need to work it out. What are we left with? We're left with the opposite at the top divided by tan angle. Okay, remember T is tan. So we know it's going to be the opposite, which is at the top of the triangle. We're going to divide it by tan angle, and that's going to give us what we crossed out, which is the adjacent. Okay, so the opposite is 14, as you can see from there. So it's going to be 14 divided by tan, the angle. The angle is over here, which is 53 degrees. So it's going to be 53, and that's equal to x. X is the adjacent. Okay, so x is the adjacent. Therefore, that's what it's going to be equal to. So we're just going to type into our calculator 14 divided by tan 53. So 14 divided by tan 53, close your brackets. Okay, and that's going to give us an answer of 10.549757 dot dot dot. And I'm just going to keep it to one decimal place. So it's going to be 10.5 to one decimal place. Okay, so that's what you should have got as your answer, 10.5. Okay, for anyone that didn't understand that, please let me know. We do have another question coming up, so that will hopefully make sense. For those of you who attempted the harder question, the answer was 28.4 to one decimal place. Over here, the answer said give it to one decimal place, so you have to give it to one decimal place. Um, and the harder question, you basically had to use Pythagoras first, because as you can see, we had a right angle triangle and we were given two sides. Because we knew the value of two sides, you can use Pythagoras. Okay, so remember from last lesson, we looked at Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras' theorem works for right angle triangles for which you know two sides. Okay, so if you know two sides, you can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared to work out the unknown side. So we worked out the unknown side, which was 12. And then after you've worked out the unknown side, then you can draw your triangle again, this second triangle. So we know 12, which we've worked out. And then this time you can use trigonometry. So you've got 12 there, you've got 25 as your angle, and then you can decide which rule to use. You had to use sine, so it was SOH that you needed to use, and then you rearrange and you should get 28.4 as your answer to what x should be. Okay? So before we move on to working out the angle, I've got another question that I'm going to go through, which is on the left side. For those of you who want to challenge yourself and have a go at a harder question, on the right side, I've got a harder question for you guys to have a go at. Again, I've got work solutions for it. I won't be going through it, but I've got the work solution after you've had a go at it. Again, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to have a go at it, and then I'm going to go through the question on the left. Okay, just one more minute now, and then I'll go through the answers. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. Okay, so for the first question, triangle ABC has a right angle. Angle BAC is 25 degrees. Angle AC is 12.5 centimeters. Calculate the length of AB. So AB is from here to here. That's X. AB, that's what we need to work out. Step one, ignore that. Step one is going to be label the sides. So right angle is over here. The side opposite it is going to be the hypotenuse. Angle is over here. The side opposite it is going to be the opposite. And then the side which is left over is going to be the adjacent. Okay? So we've labeled our sides. Step two, cross out the side which you don't need. So we need the hypotenuse because we're given the value of the hypotenuse. So we're going to keep that. We need A because that's X. If we cross it out, then it's not going to be relevant to the question. We're not going to get an answer. Okay, so we need A. O, we don't have any value. We don't know what this side is. And O is completely irrelevant to the question. So we're going to cross it out. Okay. Step three, we're going to use SOH CAH TOA. So we've got SOH CAH TOA. Okay. So we've got SOH CAH TOA over here. We need the formula that has H in it and A in it. Okay, so we need to choose which formula has H and A in it. Okay, so the first one has O and H, it doesn't have the A, so it can't be that. The second formula has A and H in it, so we're going to use that formula, A and H. Okay, so which one do we need to work out? We need to work out what A is because that's X. So we're going to cross out, A, and we're going to do C times H. C is cos, remember. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to have cos angle. The angle is 25 degrees. So we're going to have 25 degrees and we're going to multiply by H. H is 12.5 centimeters. And that's going to give us what our adjacent is. The thing that we crossed out, adjacent. Okay, so we can just type that into our calculator. Cos 25 multiplied by 12.5. And that gives us an answer of 11.32884734. And if we were to round this to one decimal place, it gives us an answer of 11.3. Okay, 11.3 to one decimal place. Okay, and that would be worth 3 marks. The harder question, which was worth 5 marks, if I show you the mark scheme, the answer was 16.5 to 3 significant figures. So again, over here, to work out BD first, when you're given length of two sides, 16 and 12, you need to use Pythagoras to work out BD first, because to use trigonometry, you need to know the length of at least one side and you need to know the angle. Okay, so we use Pythagoras to work out BD first. So 16 squared subtract 12 squared gives you 112, and then you square root it to get 4 root 7 as the simplified answer. So you know what BD is. BD is 4 root 7. Then you use trigonometry to work out CD. Okay, so remember CD is our X. We use trigonometry to work out CD. I've just drawn the triangle out again. So we know the opposite is 4 root 7, what we've just worked out. And then we know the hypotenuse is our X. Okay, and then we have the adjacent. Okay, so we need to use sine because we're given O and we're given H. We need O and H. So we've got sine 40 equals 4 root 7 over X because it's over H and H is X. Okay, so what you rearrange it to get that X is equal to 4 root 7 over sine 40, and that would get you 16.5 to 3 significant figures. Okay, for those of you who got a different answer, over here you've gone wrong when you've gone with Pythagoras. Pythagoras' theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But the side that we're given, AB, this is C, because this is opposite the right angle and it's the longest side in the triangle. So you should have done 16 squared subtract 12 squared. Okay, because you knew what A was. A was 12. Okay, that's A. And BD was B. Okay, so you needed to rearrange and do 16 squared subtract 12 squared because you already had the longest side in the triangle. Okay, so you normally get a syntax error if you've not closed your brackets or you've inputted in something that the calculator doesn't understand. Just go back and check if you've inputted everything right, just like I have over here, um, to make sure that the syntax error goes away. Okay, now to finish off today's lesson, I've got the last thing that we need to do is working out the angle. So sometimes you're not given the angle, okay? Sometimes you need to work out the angle. You need to when you know that you need to work out the angle, you basically need to use the same concept, but this time you just need to use an inverse function. Okay, so I'm going to go through these examples and it's going to be the exact same concept. Okay, so step one is going to be label sides. Okay, so over here we've got our right angle. Opposite it is going to be our hypotenuse. The angle, which is theta, which is a theta that we don't know, that's basically angle X. Angle, which is the side which is opposite it, is going to be the opposite over there. And then the side which is left over is just going to be A, adjacent. That connects the right angle to the angle over here. Okay, that's just the adjacent. Once we've labeled it, we're going to cross out the side that we don't know. Cross out the side that we don't need at all. So as you can see, O, we know the value of. A, we know the value of. We don't know the value of H. We don't need it, so we're going to cross it out. Now, once we've crossed it out, we're going to draw out our rules again. So we've got SOH, we've got CAH, and we've got TOA. Okay? Triangle again. Okay? Now we need to pick out the rule which has O and A in it. Okay? So this one has O and H, so it's not going to be this one. This one has A and H, so it's not going to be this one. This one has O and A in it, so it's going to be this one. Okay? Now, we need to work out what tan is because we don't know the angle. So we need to work out what tan is. So we're just going to cross this out because we need to work out what it is. And we're going to be left with O over A. Okay, now what's O? Okay, O is 6. Okay, so 6 divided by, remember this sign means divide over here, divided by A. A is just 8. Okay, so we're just going to do 6 divided by 8, and that's going to give us tan, our angle. Okay, but we want the angle to be by itself. So this is the only difference. Okay, we need to get rid of this tan. Okay, so on your calculator, what you're going to do is you're going to click shift, which is on the top left of your calculator. You're going to click shift and then you're going to click tan. If you click shift tan, that's going to give you tan to the power of -1. Okay, if you're having any troubles with doing that, just let me know. It's literally shift, which is the most top left of your calculator, and then you just click tan, and that will get you tan -1 open brackets. And in that open bracket, this is what you type in, 6 over 8. Okay, and if you type in 6 over 8, you're going to get yourself an angle, and to one decimal place, it's going to give you 36.9 degrees. Okay, so literally exact same concept. Once you've got to this point, you just need to click shift sin, shift cos, or shift tan, and that would get you sine to the power of -1, cos to the power of -1, or tan to the power of -1. And then once you've got that tan to the -1, you just type in what you've got over here, 6 over 8, and then that would get you your angle. Okay, if we have a look at this one, and then I'll go straight on to an exam question for you guys to have a go at before we end off. We've got a right angle triangle. So step one is going to be label sides. We've got the right angle, which is over here. The side opposite it is going to be the hypotenuse. We've got our angle over here. So the side opposite it is going to be the opposite. And then the side which is left over is going to be the adjacent, okay, or the side which connects this right angle to this angle over here. Step two is going to be cross out. Okay, so we're going to cross out the letter that we don't need. So we need A because that's 4, that's giving us a number. We need H because that's giving us 15, that's giving us a number. We don't need O because that's not telling us anything. It's totally irrelevant to the question. Okay, then we're going to write out SOH CAH TOA. So we've got SOH CAH TOA, triangle, triangle, triangle. Okay, so we've got our triangles. Now we need to choose the rule which has A in it and H in it. Okay, so this one has O and H in it, so we don't need that. This one has A and H in it, so we're going to use this one. Okay, we need to work out our angle, so we're just going to cross out C because that's what we need to work out. We're left with A over H. Okay, A is 4, H is 15, so we're going to have 4 divided by 15 because of the line there. And that's going to be equal to cos angle. Okay, but we want to get rid of that cos. So all you do is to get rid of this cos, on your calculator, you type in shift, top left, and cos. That's going to give you cos minus 1. And then when the bracket opens, this is what you're going to type into your brackets, 4 over 15. Okay, close your brackets, and you're going to get an answer of 74.5 degrees to 1 decimal place. Okay, so just before we end off, exam question again, for those of you who want a difficult exam question, I've put in a more advanced question on the right. But I'm going to give you guys 1.5 minutes, not much because we don't have much time left, to have a go at the first question on the left. And that's the one that I'm going to go through after 1 minute. Okay, there's 30 seconds left. Okay, I'm going to go through it now. Okay. So calculating the size of angle BAC, which one's that? Just look at the middle letter. The middle letter is A, so it's asking you for this angle, A. Okay, that's our X that I'm going to label. Step 1 is going to be label the sides. So right angle over here, side opposite it is going to be the hypotenuse. Angle is over here, side opposite it is going to be the opposite. And then the side which is left over is going to be the adjacent, combining the angle and the right angle together. Okay, step 2 is going to be cross out. Okay, the side that we don't need. So we need the hypotenuse because that's 13, that's giving us a number, it's useful. We need the opposite because 12 is there, it's useful. We don't need the adjacent because we're given no information about the adjacent at all. Okay, step 3 is going to be the formula, SOH CAH TOA. Okay, so we've got SOH CAH TOA over there. We need to pick out the formula that has an O in it and a H in it. Okay, so this formula has an O in it and a H in it, so we're going to use this one over here, sine. Okay, and because we're working out the angle, we're going to cross out sin, and we're going to be left with O divided by H. Okay, so O is 12 divided by H, which is 13. Okay, and that's going to be equal to sine your angle, just like we have there. Now, we don't want sine angle, we want to get rid of this sign. So we need to do the inverse. So on your calculator, you have to click Shift and sin. That's going to give you sin to the power of -1. And you just type in what you have over here, 12 over 13, into your calculator. And that's going to give you an answer of 67.4 degrees to 1 decimal place. Okay, so we've got 67.4 degrees to 1 decimal place. Okay, the harder question, here was the answer. It was 41.8 degrees for the harder question.